Hello there, you have joined me in my flat in Oxford. Our flat, mine and Jam's flat in Oxford. It's a miserable, miserable Monday, but probably not for you when you're watching it. And I'm going to be talking about my second year illustration degree project. If you are not familiar with any of my work or anything that I've done up until now, a few years ago I did a degree in illustration, a BA honours in Southampton. I got a first. I don't know if that's important to you or not. The project I'm going to go through probably didn't get a first at the time. Overall I did, but this one definitely not. So we're going to look through it and I'm going to take you through the process of a 2-part project that I think was spread across 2 or 3 months towards the end of my second year. And if I get anything wrong in this narration, I'm sure post-narration me will sarcastically and passive-aggressively correct me. So thanks for that, future me. Okay, let's go. I'm terribly sorry if I sound really salivary. I am drinking a coffee because I've just done a full day of work and I need it, so I'm so sorry. It probably won't last all video. I'm going to go ahead and split this into a few chapters, so we'll start with what grade I got in the project. For some people, this is important. My mindset was, as long as I pass and I don't disappoint others or myself, I'm peachy. It was a good project, I feel like. It ticked most of the criteria boxes, so I'm going to take a stab at a 2-1, probably a 2-2, and check to see if I'm right. Out of all the projects I did throughout my degree, this was my favourite, probably because I tried new things and I managed to work around obstacles like my lack of producing colourful work. This is at the time. I understand that if you're watching this now and you see my current work, you're like, what is she on about? But at the time, my work was quite literally, black and white. I did not work in colour, did not enjoy it, did not enjoy painting, still don't enjoy painting. So, my lack of producing colourful work, and I worked around resolving or I'll say redeeming. It was a redemption arc for my dodgy book binding that I did in the previous module. The book about superstitions of the moon, and the binding was so bad, but my tutors mentioned it and they kind of looked past it because I think overall it was a decent project. What was the brief of the project? So this was a sequential narrative module, which meant to make a work of fiction, a storytelling module. We were given a selection of poems. I can't remember the rest of them. I only remember the one I chose, which isn't very helpful, but it was an array of children's poems and then older readers' poems. We had to choose one and base our story off of it. We had a guest lecturer for this project, so that was interesting. And our lecturer kind of specialised in family-friendly children's fiction, shall we say. Needless to say, my work at the time raised a few questions over the course of the project. Some of these were questions I had trouble answering, / straight up did not want to answer. At this moment of my uni experience, I was still coming to terms with the sudden loss of a grandparent in my first year. I didn't have my family nearby, and so I coped with a lot of my feelings surrounding this event in my personal and uni artwork, which, looking back, could have just expressed it through my personal artwork, but hey, can't change anything now. I didn't intend for the story to allude to my feelings about this, but that's just the way things worked out. The theme crops up quite a bit. If you've ever grieved the loss of someone close to you, you'll most likely be able to pick out elements of my illustrations from that kind of time that depict this. Damn, I should probably mention the poem that I based the story on. I chose And Death Shall Have No Dominion by Dylan Thomas. And why did I choose to go with a dark poem when I didn't really want to draw about dark things? I don't know. Ask me at the time. I don't know why I did these things to myself, but I knew that it was a theme and a topic I sort of had a good grasp on drawing things around, and it related to a lot of themes and visuals in my work at the time, so I was like, hey, this is almost comfort zone but a little bit pushing out of it, so we'll just go with it. When I started this degree, I drilled into my own head that I was useless at writing stories and that I had none to tell. I mostly read non-fiction books and I felt like I had little to no point of reference. This thankfully wasn't true. Each time I've created a story, which is not that many times, I've always sort of started with the middle, or like a moment in the middle, and then comes the world building and fleshing out the character stages. Sometimes I get more out of the preliminary sketches than the final pages. I don't think I'm unique in feeling this though. And if some ideas don't make it to the final book, you can always build more stories around them, which is like the great part of it. Think of the brainstorming as like an investment in future projects as well as helping you in the present. From what I remember, trying to create the story for this project was a bit of a fumble all the way through. It should have been easier, arguably, because I had the opportunity to lean on the words in the poem that was already created for me. The sequential narratives I came up with when I got past the visual brainstorming stage were stories that could be read in seconds. I'll just show you one that I did in the workbook. An 8 to 10 panel comic wasn't really going to cut it. That would be like me telling my tutors that I was planning to present them an animation for my final piece and then 8 weeks later present them with a 3-second looped GIF. It just wasn't going to work out for me. Trial and error is how I got there, and this will be the unintentional method I'll use for years to come. I did a lot more thinking with the sketchbook than I would usually use them for. This was a really big step for me at the time, as I was one of those even my sketchbook has to be flawless students. This will only hinder you, and I learned this at least during my time in the degree course rather than later. Let's take a moment to flip through the actual final book, and then I will come back to you afterwards with some thoughts and feelings. Just a quick heads up, the audio should sound a bit better as I'm recording it from the living room now instead of my bedroom. What would I change about the final book? I would definitely work harder at practicing colour theory and maybe even change mediums completely. I used coloured pencils a lot during my GCSEs, but I barely touched them during the rest of my education. References. Why did I not use more? Some people will have you believe that using references like photos and other artworks is cheating. Unless you one for one try to create Starry Night, then just take this rule as BS. For the trees that were seen throughout the story, I used absolutely no references. It doesn't matter how simplistic you think the object is, just find references and use them as your starting point, always. Here's a whole page of willow trees that I drew sans reference. Way too big for my boots. Let's both bear in mind that my drawing skills have hopefully improved since 3 to 4 years ago when I made this book. Putting that thought aside, my point still stands, just use a reference. I'm not even sure what willow tree I was going for, just a generic one, and it still doesn't look quite right. So if I could go back, I would change this. For my comic Grown Up, the third year final major project, I finally decided to take timed photos of myself as posing reference. I'm not sharing them here, they're very embarrassing, but that was a good choice. Very good choice. I wish I'd dedicated more time to selecting the palette, though I suspect had I not gone with the final palette, everything may have taken twice as long. I found it difficult knowing what to delegate most of my time towards, like the palette, the character design, the setting, the story itself, but to be honest, I struggled with this throughout the degree. It wasn't unique to this project. That brings us to, how was I critiqued? Other than being encouraged to loosen up my figure drawing, my style was seldom brought up across the couple of months spent in sequential narrative mode. One thing that was brought up a few times was the fact that my plans showed no leaning towards using text in my book or the words of the poem. I admittedly grew a little annoyed, as it was an illustration degree, and if I wanted the focus to be on words, I would have taken graphic design. In order to hit the criteria, I included one small line from the poem. To me, this was enough, if not a little passive-aggressive on my part. The finished story was, according to the brief, meant to have no more than 24 pages. I went slightly over this in my plans, and I had to omit a few that I really quite liked. The real kicker came afterwards from the guest tutor, as we were talking amongst ourselves about how maybe if we'd included more pages we would have been happier or more satisfied with the project. And the guest tutor said, oh no, it could have had as many pages as you needed. So thanks for that. Guess we're just changing rules willy-nilly right now. What were the obstacles I had to overcome? Apart from the page thing, obviously. I was using my scanner to scan all the final pages for the book. I would adjust them then in an old version of Photoshop Elements from about 2010. I still sometimes do this now. A lot of people in my course had access to digital art making, and I absolutely did not have the means for this at the time. Fun fact, I used some of the money I made from my shop and my Kickstarter on my iPad and Apple Pencil. For pretty much every project, I grew frustrated at the fact that I couldn't even try digital art out. Like many art courses, the emphasis was still on traditional over digital work. Not sure if this is the same everywhere, but when you study art and design, they don't really teach you the things that you should already know. If your skills are lacking, you kind of need to work on it in your own time. One of the times I truly learned more about technique and when a piece is actually done, for sure, was from my life drawing teacher Paul and his wonderful classes. I could literally gush about his classes for hours. Obviously, I can't do that right now, but it was excellent. And if you ever get the opportunity to take life drawing classes, I definitely would. It doesn't matter about your skill level at all, but you'll come out of it learning a lot more than when you went in. Another minor, well, actually it felt major at the time, but a minor obstacle I had to overcome was the fact that I had the vision of a few pages in my head and I just could not get it out onto paper. It was so frustrating, but I'll show you the sketchbook pages so you can kind of have a look at the thought process. By this point, I'd well and truly ditched the perfect sketchbook kind of mindset, which is good. It didn't make this any less frustrating, but at least I was improving gradually. I couldn't get the right perspective on what I was drawing. Just the angle, the figure, the head shape. I don't even think if I attempted it now that I'd be able to do it still. I'm just not even going to think about it. The vision is gone from my head. I don't want to revisit it. I feel as though we've reached a natural end to the video, so thank you for watching. Take care of yourself, drink plenty of water, and I will see you next time. Also drop in the comment if you'd like to see more like this, because I have more projects that I could go through. I brought a lot of sketchbooks with me to Oxford. So with that, I shall leave you. Like and subscribe. Goodbye.